Hello and welcome back to Disheveled with Adam White. Today I'm going to talk about Dreams of the Dime by Nicolas Lietzau. It's a self-published book, but you wouldn't know it from looking at it because it's in this beautiful hardback edition. Uh, Let me read you what it's about here. Years after a harrowing war experience, ex-mercenary Jesper Dalveric has taken to drifting. It's a lonely existence, but barring the occasional bout of melancholia, he has found the closest thing to peace a man like him deserves. Life is all right. Or so he tells himself. Hoping to turn the page, Jesper accepts mysterious invitation into the beautiful but dangerous archipelago of Calais, and everything changes. Plagued by boiling social tensions and terrorism, the tropical empire is edging ever closer to civil war. Calais' merchant king may be the only one to prevent this catastrophe, but he has fallen into a preternatural coma, and it's Jesper's job to figure out who or what caused it. As the investigation takes him across the archipelago and into the king's nightmares, unexpected events not only tie Jesper's own life to the mystery, but also unearth inner demons he believed to be long exorcised. Battling old trauma while fighting for his life, his sanity, and the fate of Calais, the line between dream and reality blurs further and further until only one question remains. If your mind is the enemy, where do you run? This book I saw reviewed on BookTube, and I thought, it sounds pretty interesting. I'll give it a shot, and I'm glad I did because this may be the best book I've read this year. I really enjoyed it. It's called Dreams of the Dime by Nicolas Lietzau. It's a self-published book. Uh, I guess sometimes people feel there's a stigma attached to self-published work, which there shouldn't be because there's a lot of it that's really good out there, especially fantasy. And this is case in point. Uh, Lietzau did a magnificent job with this novel. It doesn't play out the way your typical fantasy novel plays out. Usually you have the dashing hero who's always the best fighter and never has any problems with himself and is always real confident and everything. Well, the hero in this, Jesper Dalveric, is very different. He's a competent fighter, but he has a lot of baggage and he has a lot of problems that he has to deal with in his own. Now, in literature, there's three things that happen when you have a conflict in a story. There's human versus nature, human versus human, and human versus him or herself. This one hits the trifecta and has all three. You've got a case of fighting something natural or supernatural in a way. You've got them fighting something, they're fighting against each other, the haves and the have-nots, and you have people fighting themselves. Uh, they have issues that they need to work out, and they really just have a hard time of it. Now, like I said, the main character is Jesper, and he uh, takes this job to help out a woman who is the wife of what's essentially the king of Calais, and he's fallen into a strange coma, and they don't know why. And she has a vision and wants Jesper to be the one to help him, which he doesn't even understand why, because he's just a mercenary that has never done anything of note, but he signs on because the money's good. You also have Lycia that signs on, who's a doctor, but she also has some magic powers. She's a biomancer, which she has the ability to heal. I mean, it's not superpowers or anything, but I mean, she heals minor things, and um, she has some problems of her own, as you find out. And she, though, is a pretty good person for the most part. She runs a clinic in a poor part of Calais, and she gets brought on board too to help figure out what's wrong with the king. Uh, and the last of the main characters is Kawu, who is brought in. Has some powers of his own, which I won't go into because I mean, it's not really a secret. It's part of the main story of the book, but I don't want to give anything away at all because this book is really good and I want you to read it and find out. Uh, he is probably the best person in the novel. I mean, in terms of being a good person, and he has a strange journey in this book, and it turns out for him very differently than what you might expect. The whole book kind of defies expectations because it doesn't go where your normal fantasy goes. A lot of fantasy, you like I said, you expect certain things from your fantasy, your heroes, and you know uh, your quest, uh, other things like that. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably know what you expect out of a typical fantasy, but this really goes against that and really has something new to offer to fantasy. And they do go into people's dreams, which, hence dreams of the dying, which it just is a really, really good book. Now, like I said, it's self-published. I have the hardback version, which you can see is a nice big hardback. There's probably 800 or so pages in here. You can get it in hardback, you can get it in paperback, and you can get it on Kindle for super cheap. The paperback is moderately expensive. The hardback's a little pricey, but I would recommend it because it has over 100 pages of extra material. It goes into the history of Calais. It goes into the Makehu language that they have in here. And it also has these wonderful illustrations. Um, there's the two main characters. And I didn't look at this until after I had finished reading the book. And the characters all looked pretty much like I pictured them. Which is a testament to the good art in this because they really paid attention to what they were doing. Um, I'd spring for the hardcover. I mean, obviously I did. It's worth it for the extra material. It's really interesting and gives you some insight into the story. And it really, I just can't say enough good things about this book. I don't want to give any more of the story away, but it takes you in right from the beginning of the story. The action starts to begin with. The majority of the book happens over a course of about 7 or 8 days, and it just, you fly through it even though it's a large size book, and you just want to keep reading. It is very well written. The prose is clear. He gets right to the point. Like I said, he starts out from the beginning, right in the middle of it. You get through the story, and then another thing that's a little different about this book is after you get through the main story and you've hit the end of what you think is they've accomplished what they accomplish in it, and you think, well, okay, this is the end of the book. There'll be a denouement here that is a short little afterword as to what happens next. Well, this one is actually a little lengthy in what happens after that goes down. And it's because it gives you a real look at the characters and what happens to them afterwards. And it is really, it turns out unexpectedly. Uh, you don't expect the way it turns out. And that's what I really liked about it, is that it took you to places that you don't normally see in a fantasy. And I think it was a really, really good book. Probably the best I've read this year. There's still a little bit of December left. I may read something that just blows me away, but as of right now, I'd say this is the best book I've read all year. So I highly, highly recommend it. Uh, Again, I recommend the hardcover edition. It's just a beautiful, beautiful edition. The cover art is fantastic. The illustrations inside are fantastic. It's got some maps. Uh, it's got a breakdown of the language in it that you don't get if you just get the paperback or the Kindle version. Uh, so definitely check out Dreams of the Dime by Nicolas Lietzau. It's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it. Makes a great Christmas present for uh, anyone that's a fantasy lover. Um, it's I wouldn't give it to a kid. There is some language, and the themes are just for adults. And it's more of a adult themed book. So I wouldn't give it to a kid, but for anybody else, I mean, teenage on up, I would recommend this book. Uh, Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in a week.